Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order for the Committee of the Whole for November 10th, 2021. And today is a very brief and non-existent agenda, which is going to consist of our meeting here and our training session with ELI MINA. So CAO, would you like to take it from there and do the introduction, please?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. So as Council knows, there's funds put aside each year for Council's professional development and an opportunity to do some training to help Council achieve its strategic goals. And one of the common workshops is responsible governance and Robert's rules, which is really about working as a team. So ELI MINA has provided this kind of training to councils across the country. And so I'm very happy to welcome today Mr. ELI MINA to provide some support to council in its meetings going forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Rich McDonald, and good evening, everybody. Very impressive that you dedicated the evening for something like this, and your motivation is obviously contagious. I'm not used to working in evenings. If you're enthusiastic, then I'm sharing the same enthusiasm. So just wanted to acknowledge a couple of things. One of them is that your job serving in public office and providing the leadership to the community is tough at the best of times. It becomes even 10 times tougher when meetings are held virtually and you're working under the realities of COVID. So providing leadership, providing comfort and a sense of direction to the community is not a small challenge. So for that, give yourself a pat on the back. I think this is really quite impressive. My task is to help you with meeting procedures, to help you govern more effectively. So I will share some tools with you. So we have the handout packet that was sent to you. It's titled Robert's Rules and Responsible Governance. So just so you know Robert's Rules, what it looks like. This is I'm just trying. Oh, my video somehow is not coming on. Oh, I see. Because I screen share, you cannot see the book. You may not be able to see my face either. So I'd rather have the PowerPoint for now. So for that, we'll need to make the compromise of not seeing me, but hearing me. So the book, Robert's Rules of Order, has something like 700 pages. And just for your information, I've been an expert in this book. I've been practicing with this book for the past 38 years. And I find that although it has 700 pages, in reality, I've used a very small portion of it, maybe 5% of all this book cumulatively between all the complex and different kinds of assignments that I have done over the years for my clients. So my job is to make that book more user-friendly, so you get the sense of what it's supposed to provide you with your meetings, and look outside the book and use it in a way that's common sense, that's helpful to you as you conduct your deliberations. So it is my practice to attempt whenever possible to customize the training session to the needs of the respective organization. So I've done one thing to start with, and that is I viewed your meeting in October. So I have some observations to make and some suggestions to make based on the meeting that I observed. And in addition, in a few minutes, what I'll do is I'll ask you if you have any specific requests, something that I could cover to make sure that the session is directly connected to the needs of the village. So I will ask you for that in just a few moments once we have a bit of an introduction. So just on a lighter note, when I get introduced as a parliamentarian or an expert on rules of order, the reception is not always that enthusiastic. So this is some of the things that I get, not a glamorous topic. I'm assuming you can see the PowerPoint, right? Wave at me if you do. Okay, so not considered a glamorous topic. So here's just a couple of examples on a light note. We're always good to start on a light note. Councillor Charlie was an individual who attended the workshop I did probably 1987, 88, up in northern British Columbia. And he had his hand up early in the session and said, Mr. misdemeanors is something you need to know. I have a hearing aid. And I said, what would you like me to do? Shall I raise my voice? Shall I enunciate so you don't miss even one word? And he said, don't do any of these things. Just give us an idea when you're about to tell us a joke, so I can turn it on. So that was his approach to the subject. Then we go to janitor Jim. So he was assisting me in setting up a workshop, setting up the room so everything was working effectively. He got curious and he said, what are you talking to them about? And I said, we're talking about meetings, how to make them productive, how to make them efficient and produce good decisions. And he said, I have a suggestion for you. You can share it with the participants. And I said, what is it? He said, if you want to have a really good meeting, cancel it. That was his words of wisdom. On the other side, I hear some other voices that are more positive. So the third one is a testimonial or comment that was made to me at the end of an evening workshop for a group of volunteers involved in nonprofit organizations and some in local government as well. And so one of them came to me at the end of the session and she said this, I just want to thank you, she said, for years. She said, my board members begged and pleaded with me to please run to be the chair of our board. And I always said, I cannot do that. There's just too many very assertive individuals around the table, some very strong personalities, and I don't think I can manage them with my soft voice and gentle manner. And she said, having listened to you for the past 3 hours, I now know that a loud voice is not a prerequisite. I just need a strong process and understanding of how the process works. And with that, it doesn't matter how loud or assertive people are. What matters is the process is there to help me and help them facilitate a good meeting. So just food for thought on where the procedure fits. I sometimes ask people where they stand on rules of order, and typically I get a lot of people doing number 3. Do rules of order bring you pain and suffering? And people often say that. Maybe if they're not used as effectively, they would say that, suffering and pain. Number 2, are you a bit curious? And if I'm naive and optimistic, I would ask the first one and I would get a few biters. Are you passionate about rules of order? So some people are, some crazy people like me, but most people maybe fit within the second and possibly the third one. Think about suffering and pain that happen in meetings. So I often say this, my response to the suffering bit is suffering is optional. And I will share some examples as we go through the evening, how meetings can be more efficient, more focused, more productive, and the suffering should go away and be replaced by something different. So let's just remember that phrase for this session and for moving forward from here. Suffering is optional. I thought I would ask you, further to the note of customization, I observed, as I said, the I believe October 17th or 19th meeting, and I came up with some observations that I will share with you as we go through the evening. But I'm wondering if any of you have specific requests of topics or questions that puzzle you about meetings and meeting procedures that you can share with me now. I can put it on my list. We only have 3 hours, and I usually do this just taking on Monday this week. I did a full day on meetings and rules of order, and it never got boring. So still got busy. So for 3 hours, I need to get really busy addressing your agenda rather than mine. So any specific issue that you want to add on my list for planning issues to cover this evening, anything is fair game. So whenever you're ready, just unmute yourself and let me know what you'd like me to add to the list. Any specific requests for tonight? What would make the evening as meaningful and as effective for you? I often say, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Deputy Mayor Tinsley, go ahead.
Thank you. My suggestion would be just that if the content can focus on the fact that we are a very small village, and with council members, some who have to work during the day. We all do our best, but it's a small village, and a focus on the primary things that can be handled by a small organization. So thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I will do the best I can. Anyone else? I see something in the chat, maybe. I don't know if it's a chat or not. Oh, no, it just says show participants.
CAO had her hand up.
Sorry,
Go
thank
ahead,
you.
CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. One thing I've observed is there's sometimes a bit of reluctance by council to second a motion. And I think, maybe some discussion about that process and, the fact that the seconding of a motion doesn't necessarily confer support or, eliminate the opportunity for debate. Rather, it opens up that opportunity. But just something about that process might be helpful.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just putting things on the list. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very helpful. Good to orient me. So go ahead. I'm just looking at the name, Councillor Paulson.
You're muted, Councillor Paulson.
You muted, yeah. No, still muted.
There.
Now
Thank
I
you.
can hear you.
One thing for me is coming on in the middle of a term and being brand new to all of this. It's a huge amount of information to take in and internalize, and then be able to use the information about running, being in a meeting. And I'd like to just know how, have you got any suggestions for how we can do like a quick review, and what sort of things should we focus on looking at when we're brand new? And I've tried to review the information that we've gotten, and I read it, and then next week I read something else and I forget what I read the week before, and it's a huge amount.
It's, I can imagine it would make the jump quite stressful. Thank you for sharing that, and it's on my list, so I'll address it in one way or another. Any other requests? Any other requests?
What would be considered as chair, when, say, somebody is going on too long, what would be a polite way of shortening that point, or have them come to the point? What would you suggest there?
Yeah, definitely have suggestions on that. So for sure. So anything else? Going once. Anything from staff, administration? Ms. McDonald, Ms. Clark, anything to add to the list?
Nothing further, thank you, from myself.
Okay. Okay.
And nothing from Mrs. Clark.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. McDonald. Okay. Okay, whatever. Thank you. Well, what we'll do is I'd like to proceed, and as we proceed, if I say something, say too quickly, then please do interrupt me, because we want to make sure that this subject that can get technical, it becomes easier. My job is to demystify the rules and make them work for you, and some of this I need to say is covered very nicely in Robert's Rules of Order, and some of it isn't. So I need to share with you all the range of observations that I've made over the past 30-some years. So let me just go to this. I'm saying time is short, so let's have what I call an executive summary. What exactly is it that we're trying to do with all these subjects? So what are they? First of all, under A, can you see the PowerPoint? See, are we okay? It says executive summary at the top. You can see it. So meeting goals. What are the goals of the meeting beyond 700 pages of Robert's Rules of Order? What exactly are we trying to do? So we're trying to engage the participants in a conversation. I say engage them on a level playing field. So no one individual takes up 10, 15 minutes when someone else has not even spoken, and then we proceed to the vote. That doesn't make any sense. We want to engage the knowledge, the wisdom that exists in the room on a level playing field. engagement. Timing. We need to manage our time effectively so that the right amount of time is given to the issues proportionate to the significance of the issue. So issues that are bigger, that are more complex, will probably need more time. And issues that are simpler shouldn't take more than, let's say, a few minutes. So some of them may not need time, some of them do. And the idea is both for the mayor and for each councillor to observe the process. So mayor, you're the chief manager of the process. The process is your best friend, and part of it is, for example, if we end up spending more time than we need to on an issue, and we worry that issues later on the agenda will be compromised as a result of it because people will be tired by then. So, council, are we ready to move on? We have 3 more significant issues that need our full attention. Are we ready to move on to the next subject? And if someone is rambling and taking a long time to make their point, Councilor so can I get you to get to the point? Because we have quite a few more things that need to be said, some more information to be shared by the administration, so we need to move on. So we say these things gently. We want to show respect to the individual, but we also want to show respect for the process. So time management is one of the most critical parts, and one that I find when I work as parliamentarian is one that I pay the most attention to, because time means if we manage it well, we preserve our intellectual capacity, not only for the beginning of the meeting, but we're capable in listening and learning from the discussion later in the meeting. So that's one thing to consider. The time management is critical in the management of a meeting. Last component, so we have meeting goals, engagement, timing, and then quality decisions. We need to achieve wise decisions that will solve the problems at hand and which will achieve a resolution, an appropriate resolution to sometimes complex issues. I need to say this too. Under engagement, what I might have been ready to what I said was that it's only the engagement of the voting members that we need to consider. When in fact the administrative staff, and you have 5 staff as I understand it, that their knowledge is also brought into the conversation. And if a councillor is not sure about the technical aspect of it, you should feel free to ask, can a chief financial officer, can a chief administrative officer, can they chime in and let us know about the financial, legal, and other operational implications, the human resources. In other words, if you want to know, for example, what's the staff capacity to deal with issues and how much time do they have on their hands? And are we overburdening them by giving them too much to do, so much so that they're just get to be very exhausted at the end of every day? So the qualified party to give you that information is the administrative staff. So engaging them as well, not only the voting members. So meeting goals, engagement of all the brain power that's available to us, managing our time wisely, and achieving quality decisions. And it's not easy to achieve those decisions when the population is small, when the infrastructure is aging and needs some attention. So your challenges ahead are quite substantial. So B, evaluation. This is something that in the handout package, I have it on pages 15 to 18. We will not cover them specifically. I just want to draw your attention to them. And I would suggest that you do those evaluations, whether it's collective or whether it is individual, that you do them on a regular basis. So I can say page 15 in the handout package includes council evaluations collectively. Page 16 covers an evaluation for you as a council member, and is so that will be for you. Page 17 is for the chair. So mayor, you could evaluate yourself, how you run meetings, to what extent do you match the standard, to what extent do you need to learn different skills. So that can be another place to look for, self-evaluation for the chair. And you can receive feedback from others too. To me, I find that as people give me feedback, I always say, I'm not God, I'm capable of making mistakes, so please give me your feedback. Your feedback is a gift to me. So that's page 17. Page 18 has evaluating your relationship with the management team. with the staff, with the administration. In some municipalities, this has caused tension, and in some instances caused staff to function at a lower level than they're capable to because of those tensions becoming a distraction. So looking at that relationship, evaluating it, and giving feedback as a way of, you could say, getting rid of bottlenecks and getting into efficiency and effectiveness. So that's the evaluation. Another thing under the executive summary is how we deal with conflict. How do we deal with differences of opinion? So what I find that in some instances, let's ignore what's on the sea. Let me tell you how reality sometimes looks to me. To say in some instances, people get frustrated with say someone or two individuals, and they end up not talking to the individuals, they end up talking about the individuals and expressing frustrations about that individuals and their conduct. When really works better is if we talk to the individuals and find ways of conveying some observations, some suggestions, some requests, saying, for example, it would really help me function to my best if you could embrace the following behaviors and if you could leave behind the following behaviors. And it's not only about me, but it's also about how we serve the citizens, how we facilitate decision making, how we provide for a good legacy for us as a governing body. So talking to people, because those frustrations can really diminish the success and the effectiveness of the council individually and collectively. So I'd rather you talk to me if you get frustrated than talk about me. That's the thought there. Under D, this is big, macro agenda. So we're probably used to looking at a meeting agenda, and that's fine. Meeting agenda contains agenda item, contains some motions which your capable staff writes for you, which is all good. But we also need to look at the macro agenda. Macro agenda, if you were elected today for 4 years, that would have been 2018, then the way it looks like for me is this. If we get elected today for 4 years, then 4 years down the road, you want to look in the rearview mirror and say, here are some of our accomplishments. So unfortunately, many councils don't get to that place because they never talked about it at the beginning. So here it is. Your term, you still have 1 year in the term of office. So October 2022 will be the time that the election will come. And I would think this, that it would be good to, shortly after the session, to have some kind of a gathering, possibly with community input, possibly at some point, and determining, come the October 2022 elections, what is it that you would want to look back in the rearview mirror and say, here are some of our accomplishments. Here are some of the things that we did beginning October or November 2021. You have a year, and so it might be good to say, come the end of it, the end of that year, come the next term of office, we want to leave the community with something that they can be proud of, that we can be proud of, that maybe we work together with administrative staff, with the community, with input from the community, and achieve certain goals, such as, I don't know, some of the infrastructure issue for the community, the services that are being provided, some problems that exist now that we want to have resolved a year from today, get some advice from the staff, and this way we make some progress. And you have something to look back at and say, wow, we set some goals, with input from a staff, with input from our communities, and we have some achievement to scratch to our collective service to the community. This is way beyond rule of order, but I think it's essential to have that sense of purpose and to establish it shortly after the session ends, beginning to set those goals and get to work with the staff, with the community, and build one big team. I know that's a small village, 370 some people. So can we somehow turn them into a team that helps us in some way achieve goals that we set with input from the administration? So it's a three-way partnership between you as elected officials, between the administration, and with the community. So complicated, but if you can do that, it's wonderful. It's your legacy a year down the road. I mean, obviously, would it be nice if it was 4 years, but you have 1 year, and I'm suggesting this is big. This goes beyond Robert's Rule of Order and goes into how you govern and what results you deliver to the community. And the E, who is it that we serve? And sometimes I find in political body, people get to think a lot about the voters. And I don't sense that this is a reality for you, but in some council, people want to get re-elected, and that becomes the only thing that they care about. So in that case, you worry about the citizens who are here today, who have the right to vote. But do you think about the non-voters, people who don't have votes, maybe their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, people who will be here 20, 30, 100 years down the road, and how they will be affected by your term of office? Are you thinking about them as well? So who do we serve? The result of the votes that you will take in the next while will affect not only the people who are here today, the 370 some people who are here today, but will affect the future citizens. And will they affect the people who don't have any voices, such as not the people, the entities, such as the environment, the physical environment within which we live, and who will be affected by the decisions that you make? So just food for thought in terms of local government. It's not only the entities that have voices and that come to your meetings and tell you what frustrates them and what is it that they want. It's also the voteless and the voiceless that need to be considered in this reality so you could provide stellar results for the community that you love. So again, small village, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a capacity to make a difference. You just need to define it, work with the administration, engage the community, and you have that. I think it's inevitable that come, and I'm optimistic in saying it. Maybe I'm naive, optimistic, but I'm optimistic in saying come October 2022, you will have some significant achievements to your credit, to the credit of this council. So that's part of the executive summary. There's a couple more things to consider. One of them is a community engagement level. This is what I find, and I always like to do that. I'm thinking about my city. I live in Vancouver, and I would say that probably 90% of the citizens are involved at the lowest level of engagement as customers. They feel that they're entitled to certain things, and they will function in a way that as long as they get their entitlement, they will not be there observing your meetings and signing up to speak to you as their elected representative. So they're customers, acting as customers. And for me, that's basically where I am. We get what we want, we get the water, we get the sewer, we get the services of the city. As long as that is the case, I'll just get on with my life. So second level, socialites, people who might come and sit in the public gallery or when it's back away from COVID, when we have actually in-person meetings, socialites. They just like to socialize, to make connection with the neighbors, to become engaged socially. May not be interested necessarily in the governance side. The watchers will be the individuals who are looking at your agendas, looking at your minutes, and they want to watch you and know what it is that you're doing. So far, the engagement levels are rising, then a level higher. The critics, those individuals who are critical of what you do, and they will tell you without hesitating, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. And you know what? At least they're engaged. At least they're involved. This is wonderful. Let's more citizens be involved. Let us hear more criticism, and we benefit from it, and we learn from it, and we deliver more better governance this way. It's higher level of engagement. Quite high, the creators, the people that you want to engage in your committee work, perhaps. So people who are more involved, not only in criticizing, but also in offering some suggestions, some ideas so that we can become more effective. And if you open it to the bigger subject that I was discussing, then the community should be interested and you benefit from it and you become much stronger in leading the community to that place of accomplishment. Okay, and the highest level of engagement are in this room, are in this call. You, the leaders of the community, you have the highest level of engagement. You're brave enough to take this on. Some of you late in the term of office, you should be commended for doing that, taking on the lead, and hopefully through your leadership by the end of 2022, more citizens shift away from being your customers and become more involved in the critic or the higher level of the engagement. So another thing to consider in terms of the bigger picture of what we're dealing with under the executive summary. These are two quotes from Robert's Rule of Order. This is the first one. RONR 12, by the way, is Robert's Rule of Order, newly revised, the 12th edition, paragraph 47.6. He says, any presiding officer will do well to bear in mind that no rules can take the place of tact and common sense on the part of the chair. So, Mr. Mayor, this is for you. Run the meeting in a way that is sensible, that is promote the idea of we want to achieve good results, that is engaging, that is managing time effectively, that is kind of achieving the good decisions, the stellar decision and good governance. So as long as you do that, the nitty-gritty details of the rules become less significant because you implement them in a way that makes sense. So it's, you know what, this is not necessarily a rule. It's in a book on rules of order, but it makes so much sense that in my practice, this is 90% of what I do is I make the rules used in a way that is making sense, as opposed to getting worried about 700 pages of rules. 99% of them we are not likely to use. That's one. There's another phrase that's really quite interesting, and it deals with what if a rule is being violated in some way. And so this is what's, again, straight from Robert's Rule of Order. He talks about in some rules being broken and what do we do about it. So it says, in ordinary meetings, it is undesirable to raise points of order on minor irregularities of a purely technical character if it is clear that no one's rights are being infringed upon and no real harm is being done to the proper transaction of business. So we're not looking for perfection in the use of 700 pages of rules and your procedure bylaw. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for simple questions that I was raising earlier. Are we engaging people on a level playing field? Are we managing our time effectively? And are we achieving the goal of good decision making? And as long as we do those things, the seconding and the making of motions and all of these things become secondary because it's just a means to an end. Rules are a means to an end and not an end in themselves. It might sound strange to hear a professional parliamentarian telling you these things, but it's in the book because 700 pages is impossible to implement, especially in a small body, 5 individuals around the table running one meeting. We don't need that much by way of rules. We just need to use them in a way that reflects the previous quote and this one. And let me see what else. We'll discuss this one. I call it the OFIDS formula in the handout packages on page 2. We'll discuss it later. I would say the minimum for this evening, we need to discuss this one, the OFIDS. What is it that you need for a good meeting? Order, focus, efficiency, equality, decorum, that is a respectful discussion, and a safe meeting environment. So this is a 6. We need to discuss them later on in the evening. And so that's the end of the executive summary. We'll elaborate on some of those things as we go through the evening. I need to tell you, usually we do this session in a day or in 2 sessions. I'll try to contain as much of it, and especially the things that you requested and the things that I observed in the October meeting. But for now, this is what I'm looking at. Any questions so far? Are we doing okay? Any complaints? Okay, so it's big. I just try to put the key points that you need to consider from your vantage point of an elected official being elected to govern a village, a small village, but important for you to concentrate on the needs of the village and govern in a way that delivers that great stellar leadership to the village. So let me comment on some of the, unless you have any questions, I want to comment on some of the things that I observed, and I'll be giving feedback. Okay, so I'll be giving feedback to the mayor, to council members on some of the things that I observed that may need some attention. On a positive note, the meeting that I observed seemed to take about an hour and no more than an hour and a half. I didn't state it at the very end, but I just looked at the clock on it and it seemed to be an hour and a half. This is good. Good news, because I'm thinking about some of the meetings of council. Typically, the complaint is we get to the end of the meeting and we're exhausted. And when we are exhausted, we end up rushing things through because we just don't have any time for this. We just want to get out of the room already. And you know what? That's the worst time to make a decision, especially when the decision is significant and complex. You want to have the full intellectual capacity to concentrate, to make informed, responsible, judicious, and thoughtful decisions. You must have that. So in your case, say the meeting is short, we debate the issues that we need to, and those that don't need a debate, we just move over them more quickly. And so we preserve our intellectual capacity, especially if you have your meetings during the evening. You need to be careful because that's the end of the day, and it's easy to come to a meeting with an attitude of, let's get this one over with already. And then you don't give the attention to the issues, the attention that they need in order to make an informed decision. So that's one thing that I thought was good. Mayor, my compliments. You were moving the meeting along. That was quite good. Okay. Now, I have some observations. One of them is the style of when you open a motion for debate, you don't really open it for debate. You just say opposed. And so it seems like all people can do is oppose something. Well, here is the full script to use. We facilitate the conversations. We put the motion on the floor, let's say. It's moved, seconded. So you say it is moved and seconded that this and this and this be done. Is there any debate? Not opposed. Is there any debate? Because people might want to say something in favor, want to say something against. So we want to make sure that we do that so that, and I saw a few examples. People said, I want to speak. So when you say opposed, it's like the debate has ended. You want to save that comment to that calling of the vote to the end. So it's moved and seconded that we do, that council authorized the motion as displayed on the screen. Is there any debate? That's to start with. And then you give the chance of a debate. And once debate has occurred, or at least the opportunity for debate was given, then at some point, are we ready for the vote? And then we don't just say oppose, we just say those in favor of the motion that's displayed on the screen, raise one hand if you're in favor. So you want to make sure to ask that question so that the proponents have a chance to actually raise their hand. And then those opposed to the motion raise their hand. And so they have a chance to raise their hand, and you say the affirmative has it and the motion is adopted, or the negative has it and the motion is defeated. So the reason I say this is this, I always say that the moment of voting is like a sacred moment. We don't want to rush it. This is one place where we don't want to save time, because it's more often that I hear people complaining of the vote being rushed. The moment of voting is a sacred moment. So again, we will not proceed to the vote. The motion is on the screen, and if you may need to repeat it. Those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. So we want to give a chance. Now, I know the reason why you'd say those opposed and non-opposed, the motion is carried. In the case of a non-controversial motion, that may be okay. But in any event, you want to say, is there any debate? And then those in favor, those against, it's more, maybe it takes a little bit more time, but it's each one of those steps is important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Do I not usually, I usually go motion, second, discussion.
Yeah. I didn't hear the word discussion. In several
Yeah,
places I
no,
heard
I
the
think
word.
with every one that I've done, I mean, I don't know if I missed one or not, but council can correct me. But I usually go motion, second, discussion,
Yeah.
and then opposed, motion carried, motion defeated.
Yeah, but I never start. You heard it. I know. Put it this way. The reason why people don't even go for those in favor is that there's something in the legislation, and it's very odd to me as a parliamentarian, because it says the legislation says if someone does not oppose, they're deemed to have voted in favor. That's the legislation. The legislation says abstention counts as votes in the affirmative. So if you say opposed and nobody opposed, in theory the motion was adopted unanimously. But what we end up shortchanging here is the opportunity of debate and the opportunity to vote yes and to vote no, to actually do that. From the community, I found often, and there was something written for the newspaper here in Vancouver, because the Vancouver Charter is the same thing. It says if someone does not vote, it counts as a vote in favor. But the complaint is that it's not transparent. We need to see people actually raising their hands in favor rather than saying you didn't oppose, therefore you count as though you voted in favor. Does that make sense? Just a bit of a change to how you call the vote or how you facilitate, especially if a debate, if it's a substantive motion. There were instances where people were saying, no, hold it, I want to speak to this. So we want to structure it so they have the opportunity to speak to this. I speak in favor, and here is why. I speak against, and here is why. So we want to enable that. The only exception I would think that I would tolerate would be if there's a motion to receive a report. Now, here is a thought, and it may sound like a big surprise to you. The motion to receive a report, although used in many municipalities, is completely redundant. Robert Rule does not like it, and so the same applies to me. I don't like the motion to receive because it's misleading. It doesn't really do anything. Many municipalities do it, but here it is. Do you really have an option to vote down the motion to receive? Motion to receive, if a report was presented, then it was received. Then why are we saying let's vote to receive it when in fact it has been received, it was presented? So it's another, people become slaves to habit because that's the way we've always done it. If you want to abandon that habit and just say, here's an example. If the report does not contain a recommendation, all you need to say is, are there any questions about the report? Any questions about the report? No question or no further question. Thank you. The report will be placed on file and we move on to the next agenda item. So we don't need to have a motion to receive. If you insist on doing it, do it, those in favor, those against. And, but it really isn't even necessary to do it. Does that make sense? Maybe Anne, you can chime in, Chief Administrative Officer, or Lisa Clark, Chief Financial Officer. Is there any problem from what you can see that forces you to have votes on motion to receive?
This is Anne. No, I don't think there's any reason why we're obligated to it. I think you've hit the nail in that there's a certain habit to it. And it does kind of, there are times where council won't be requested to make a decision or to take a further step on things, but rather just to receive the reports.
Yeah.
So there are some times.
Great. And if that is the case, then we don't need to even put that motion to receive on on the screen. So that the mayor will say, are there any questions about the report? And maybe a question or two. And at the end of that, there's no action proposed in the report. Therefore, the report will be placed on file. Report will be placed on file. And the next agenda item is, so we end up saving time. And we're saving the confusion. I think as community members often get confused, what is the meaning of a motion to receive a report? If it was received already, can we possibly vote against it? So here it is. It doesn't make sense. So let's put in common sense. And if you want to change practices, good on you. So are we okay so far? So repeat the motions, take votes in favor and against, not just look for the opposed, look for both the affirmative, those in favor of the motion, those against motion, if it is a substantive motion. Receive is not really substantive motions, and I think it can be abandoned. The other thing is the difference between, let me see, maybe before I'll come back to this one, tabling versus postponing. I need to explain the difference for you. But a few other things that are maybe more significant. You have the chief administrative officer and chief financial officer, and when they were advising, we could not see them on the screen. So I think for the sake of transparency, it's good to have individuals who, when they advise you, you can also see them and you can hear them. That makes for a more complete meeting. In the reality of virtual meetings, things are tough enough. So if there's a way that they can be on the screen when they advise you, especially, that would be, I think, quite helpful. To the compliment of the staff, it was wonderful to see motions prepared in advance of the meeting and motions that supported an agenda item being displayed. And this way it's easy to say the motion is in front of you, council, and the public can also see the motion then, which was wonderful. That was a compliment that I gave on the way the meeting was run. But it's just that I didn't see the advisor, the staff. It's good to, if it's possible, technologically, to also have them displayed when, especially when they speak. Okay. There was an argument at some point during the meeting about seconding. Was the motion seconded? Was it not seconded? And there was an argument that it died on the floor for lack of a second. This is kind of a dramatic way of I almost chuckle at a parliamentarian, because the seconding requirement in Robert's Rule of Order is not really all that significant. So here's a thought I have, is that many council, especially small municipal council, do not have the requirement of a second. They just remove it, because seconder is more important in a big assembly, let's say hundreds of people. So you don't want to have motions come to the floor when only one individual out of 500, let's say, is interested in that being discussed. In small bodies, and I just worked with a municipality in Alberta the other day, and they said, what are you talking about seconding? We don't second motions around here. And that's consistent with Robert's Rule of Order. For small assemblies, seconding, Robert does not require seconding of a motion, just the moving of it. Moving of it, let's put it on the floor. And people ask me whether the chair can move a motion. The chair can certainly assume a motion and put it on the floor. We don't have to look for someone to make it. So some small misconceptions. I don't know that there will be a lot of added efficiency by eliminating unnecessary steps. I'm just giving you some options tonight. Okay, so died for lack of a second, I think, is an over dramatization. It did not die, it just never lived. So it's kind of funny when I hear those words being used. Okay, so how are we doing so far? So we can do away with seconding if you wish. As a council, you can maybe even explicitly say to the administrative, give some direction that the bylaw be amended to remove the name of this, to remove the seconding requirement, because it's really too much of a barrier.
So just so, sorry, yeah, just so I'm clear. So what you're saying is we have a motion and then we go right into debate. Is that correct?
Yeah, so for example, you could say the motion is on the screen. As your chair, I will assume the motion. Instead of looking for movers and seconders, I will assume the motion. That's perfectly
And that's what I
fine.
state?
Yep.
I state
The
that
chair will
verbally?
assume the motion. Yeah, so you say, I assume the motion in a way saying, I'm putting the motion on the floor. So who puts the motion on the floor is not relevant. What's relevant is the discussion and the decision, which is collected, which is council's decision. So we want to remove the attention from individuals and focus on the collective, what the group did rather than what individuals did. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
We do, okay. So maybe council is here, and I think one councillor is not here. So maybe it's just passing some notes to Councillor Craig that here are some of the things that we learned in the session. Okay.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, we go from motion and I say I assume the motion, and then we go to discussion, and then we vote for all in favor and
Sure.
who's
And then,
opposed.
yeah, exactly. So the
Okay.
chair, the motion is on the screen. The chair will assume the motion. And is there any debate on the motion? And if there's no debate, we'll take a vote on the motion. Those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. You want to start always with the affirmative and then go to the negative. Don't rush to the negative. Those opposed, it's premature. We just want to say, here is the motion. We'll take the vote. If you're in favor of the motion, hands up, lower your hand. If you're against it, hands up, lower your hands, and then you declare the results. It's just cleaner this way. Okay.
Thank you.
And there was something that I noted on one occasion. Somebody must not have muted their must have unmuted themselves, and you could hear a lot of background noise. So if people do that, as mayor, you're perfectly fine to direct it. Please mute yourself while you're not speaking. Unmute only when you're speaking, when the mayor recognizes you to speak. So it was just a bit of a distraction for a short time, but it's good to educate, inform the public, and remind people around the table to please mute themselves when they're not speaking. Okay. And let me see. Here's one thing that there was a question of on that. Apparently there was a motion in the previous meeting to do away with the incorporation, and instead of being a village, becoming an electoral area, and that was brought back for reconsideration. And I believe, Mayor, you initiated it for consideration under the legislation, a provision that gives you a right to initiate it. So here a couple of things. The mayor can do that under the legislation. I believe you received the advice that you can do that. But a member of council can also do that, can bring a motion forward by saying, I move that the motion be reconsidered, and then that gets debated and voted on by council, whether or not that would be done. And the motion to reconsider was written on the screen. That was very nice. Staff, again, kudos to you, compliment. But here's one thought. It would have been good to explain on what basis you were doing the reconsideration and what was the original motion that was adopted that was being reconsidered at that point. So here it is. Next agenda item is a motion to reconsider a decision that was made at the previous meeting, and that motion was this and this and this. As mayor, I consulted staff and I found out that I can do the following under the legislation. And so I'm using that as a way of bringing that motion forward for reconsideration. So here it is. We think about the members of the public that will be educated or informed as to what is the correct way and the basis on which the mayor has brought the motion back for reconsideration. Does that make sense? Yeah, I
It
think I'm
does. Thank you.
catching it. Yeah. So just public education, because I was looking at it as though I am a member of the community who doesn't know much about meeting procedures, and I could use some education. So we say the meeting is under public scrutiny all the time, and we don't want to leave the public confused. So just explaining to them, here is what happened at the previous meeting, and in light of some information that came in since that time, I decided as mayor that it was proper to bring it back for reconsideration, and under this and this section, with advice from the administration, I am bringing that motion for reconsideration, and here it is on the screen. Okay, so just informing, educating, and it slows down the process, but it's a good investment of time for the sake of public education, for the sake of making sure everybody understood what was being done. Does that make sense? Make sense? Any questions
Yes,
from
it does.
council?
Thank you.
Yeah, just explaining I thought that would have been quite good to do. So reconsideration, I thought it was kind of funny that some people voted against the motion to receive. So here we go. They didn't like something about the motion, about the report itself, so they voted against the motion to receive it. So it gets into parliamentary, I call it not quite parliamentary nonsense, but it just, because of the motion to receive and people were looking for an option to say they didn't like the report, they were wanting to vote against receipt, which doesn't do anything really. So, and then there was some tensions at the meeting. I could detect some, I don't know, someone didn't like a specific proposal. So I think good language for mayor if you want, and maybe for council members too. Can we please lower the tone of this conversation? Basically, we want to have respectful dialogue. We can disagree with one another, and that's fine. That's the mark of a good democracy. We will have differences of opinion, but we perfectly fine to ask individuals to please keep the comments respectful. So we lower the tone of the conversation and display the disposition which is respectful. In other words, we can disagree without being disagreeable. Just food for thought. I noticed a bit of, maybe I could detect a bit of tension, and disagreements as such are not a problem. But when it gets to be tense, then the meeting environment becomes a little bit less safe and becomes more difficult to get engaged. So let's look after the the climate at the meeting. So these are the main comments I had as far as the um, the meeting that I observed. Let me go back to the comments that you requested. Again, I want to make sure that I cover these first, and then I carry on with the agenda that I have. I cannot treat this one as a normal so-called workshop, because I want to make sure that we customize it, especially since it's a one evening session. So one of the questions that you were raising was, this is a small village, and the amount of work that's involved in getting ready for meetings. So it is. The fact that it's small does not make the work less complicated, but you need to get the support from the administration. And it sounds like there need to be some discussion about how you work with administration and what kind of support you need from the administration, and on what basis you receive the reports that you receive. How early do you need information received so that you come to a meeting prepared, being prepared to have some knowledge, some ideas in your head in terms of what is this issue that we're dealing with, and they can debate the issue from a basis of knowledge, from a platform of knowledge. So some of the questions have to do with how complex is the report, how technical is it, and do you need more, especially if this is you're new to council and you need more of a knowledge base on which to debate issues. This is the thought I have. And Councillor Paulson, the fact that you knew no one should hold that against you, you're an equal partner. In the end, it's one person, one vote. You get the same weight as other people do when it comes to voting. And because of it, you are entitled to have the platform, the knowledge platform on which to cast your vote. And I find that in some instances, people are afraid to ask for the information that they need. Please don't. You're an equal partner in this, and you need to be treated by the system as an equal partner. And nobody does anything because they're bad, but sometimes people don't think that way necessarily. So make it easy for yourself to ask the questions that you need and to request the support that you need. Administration, I'm sure, will be very happy to accommodate your needs for more information and to receive that information earlier. You deserve it. The community deserves to have a fully informed and fully confident council member serving the community. Does that make sense? So I say that because sometimes council members, I don't know, I'm new, what am I going to do? I don't want to have any waves here. I don't want to slow the meeting down. So maybe a lot of that work can be done in advance of the meeting so that you can arrive at the meeting informed on an equal level playing field with your colleagues who may be more experienced than you are. Is that helpful? Level playing field. We want to engage on the knowledge that exists in the room, and we want to make sure that we give the individual around the table the same platform, access to the same platform of knowledge. So by the time we arrive at the table, each vote is worth the one person, one vote. And I'm saying this because I've been asked this question on several occasions. On one occasion, an individual who in a different province, Alberta, was doing a session, and she said early in the session, I feel like my vote is not worth 100%. Councillor B over there is much more experienced than I am. He has more access to the stuff than I do. And so maybe he deserves to have one and a half votes, and I deserve to have half a vote. And I said, it doesn't work that way. One councillor, one vote. We just need to make sure that you have more access you have the same access that everybody else does. So for example, if staff gets an email between meetings asking for some clarification on some technical issue, their procedure must be the same information goes to every councillor and the mayor at the same time, so we can build that level playing field of knowledge. Come to meetings confident. So don't treat yourself as a second class councillor. You are first class councillor like everybody else. Okay? So that's food for thought on this one. So processing, seconding, and supporting. So I think I've answered this one, or did I? There was some question about how do we process a motion, and seconding. The seconding means support. So I had my two comments are if we can do away with seconding altogether, I think that would be fine. But you need to establish that through your procedure bylaw, and until that time, if we can not hang our hats too heavily on the procedural aspect. And if the mayor can assume more motions, then moving and seconding may become less necessary. And we just get the business done. We put the motion on the floor. Putting it on the floor is not as significant as having the debate that needs to occur. It's making sure that at the end of that, people know exactly what it is that they're voting on. So we say those in favor, raise your hand, lower your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. That is more significant than the parliamentary precision. Mayor, any question?
Yes, so until we change the procedural bylaw, we should keep the second in, or can we do it without changing the bylaw?
Okay, so I put it this way. I don't know that the seconding is explicitly required in the bylaw. Let's hear from Anna. You able to respond to this one? Do you know if the procedure bylaw explicitly requires seconding?
No, I don't know that offhand, Eli. I have to look that up, and I've been sort of pulling that up as you've asked this question. So
Okay.
chances are, though, that we would want to make it clear if we were making a change, because there's such an established practice of pattern. It might be helpful to have it clarified.
So it could be this, and thank you. I figured that I didn't want to put you on the spot because procedure bylaws tend to be quite voluminous, and I cannot expect. I mean, this staff has so much on their plate, as you said, to become expert on the procedure bylaw. And a 700-page Robert's Rule of Order is not a reasonable expectation, but it's good to check that out. If you want to change practices, let's say that put it on a list of things that once we get professional advice from our staff, then we will look at making a change. Okay, so it could be that the procedure bylaw need to be amended to reflect that. It could be that until that time, we still look for movers and seconders, but we'll make that a quick process. Okay, and the mayor, I don't think is precluded from being the mover or the one who helps put it on the floor. Okay, any more questions?
So the mayor can second the motion?
There's nothing that I know that would preclude you from doing it. And so Robert would not preclude you from doing it in a small meeting. So the mayor is given quite a bit more in terms of rights in a small meeting than a chair of a meeting that has hundreds of people in it usually is expected to be 100% impartial and not get involved in making, seconding, or debating a motion. So keep in mind, we're talking about, say, large meeting, nonprofit, or I don't know, some kind of corporate credit union. So in those settings, because it's so big, the meeting is so large, there's a higher requirement of objectivity and impartiality on the chair than it is in your case. You're the mayor, you're a participant in the discussion, you're a participant in the voting. You don't abstain from voting because abstention counts as a positive vote. So you can speak in debate too, as long as you go in line. So for example, if you want to speak in debate as chair, as mayor, you say, I add my name to the speakers list. So ahead of me, Councillor Poulson, and then I have Councillor Tinsley, Deputy Mayor Tinsley, and then I'll be number 3 on the list. So you speak on the same basis as everybody else, but you're entitled to speak. I mean, to say to the mayor, you don't speak because you're the mayor, you're the chair, that would deny council the benefit of your wisdom, the wisdom benefit of your knowledge. That would make no sense whatsoever.
Thank you.
You speak in debate, but you add your name to the list. I'm speaking number 3 on the list. Ahead of me now is Councillor Tinsley, and then Councillor Cragg is number 2, and I'm number 3 on the list. So then you manage the process. So that's this one. So information overload. Yeah. So what if? So yeah, that was raised. Another question about so much information. And you know what? It's the fact that it's a small village. does not change the fact that you need to cast informed vote. And sometimes these are very complicated issues. So learning as much as you can in advance. And if it seems to be going too quickly for you, there's a good chance it's going too quickly for other councillors, other members of council. So it's good to push the pause button in some instances. Let's hear an update from the administration. And if we're not ready to take a vote and it can wait, let's send it to the administration for further clarification to be presented at the next meeting. And then we're more confident that we're casting an informed vote. That's good governance. It's not a Robert's Rules requirement to cast an informed vote, but I would think that's what the community deserves. So I don't care what Robert says. Still, you need to thrive on making informed decisions that you can be proud of. We have done our due diligence. We asked all the necessary questions, and we're comfortable that we made the right decision. Okay, so that's one thing to consider. Information overload is not uncommon. We just need to manage it. We need to work with the administration to make sure that we get good quality analysis and we can prepare properly for meetings. And when we're not ready to vote, I call those the green bananas. You don't want to eat green bananas. You want to give them time to ripen. So if you get an issue that seems to be very quickly landing in front of you and you're not ready, then say, I move that we postpone the decision until the next meeting. And then council doesn't vote on the issue, it votes on whether or not to postpone it. Then the majority can make that decision. Or if you want administration to study it some more and to hire a consultant to bring you some more knowledge, then you make a motion to that effect. I move to refer the issue back to administration to bring up more analysis on the following parts. So I think the idea is the procedure is there to help you. Motion to postpone if the issue can wait, or motion to refer if you want to be sent to an expert to give you more information that you need. Complex infrastructure is aging. That is a big issue. You need to have definitive advice if you're going to spend substantial amounts of money on improving the infrastructure for the village. You cannot just do it in a hurry. You need to have the confidence that you're casting an informed vote. Okay, and let me see, another one that was brought up is the question of it taking too long or people talk for too long. So, and we can cover that more under the OFEEDs. Remember when I mentioned that. But I can give you the tips now as well. Number one is estimating before the meeting begins. So usually the task goes to you, Mr. Mayor, together with the input from the administration, that we allocate sufficient time to issues and have a preliminary estimation of how much time they will need. So this way we present it at the beginning of the meeting. And for example, if an issue is substantial, the mayor will say, next issue needs some time. Is there any objection to allowing half an hour for this issue? Because it doesn't need that time. If an issue is small, let's say 2 or 3 of them are really small, if there's no objection, since these issues seem to be not needing as much debate, if you can allow 5 minutes to make those 3 decisions together. People call that consent agenda. If 3 items are so non-controversial, likely have no debate on them, if there's no objection, we'll vote on them together in one vote and have less debate. So we want to invest our time well. We want to invest our intellectual capacity well. So if there's an item on which we need to learn quite a bit, to have more conversation, more debate, we allocate more time to it. If there's an item that is less necessary to invest the time in, then we do that. We do that with the consent of council. Okay. Now, the other thing is, what if an individual has a way of taking a long time to make their point? So for that, we need to find the best way is a proactive approach at the start of the meeting. So here is an example. Members, if the mayor can give you a script, Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, when you're in the chair. So council, we have quite a few significant issues on the agenda that will need time, and we want to make sure that we can finish this meeting at a reasonable hour while we're still fresh and able to debate and vote on issues, I need your help. I need your help, and you could help us by keeping your comments brief and to the point. Say what's necessary to be said, but keep it to, let's say, a couple minutes at the most, because we have a lot of things to cover. Can I count on your support? So I'm not talking parliamentary procedure. I'm just talking about common sense. Common sense is that we need to debate issues that need the time. But as individuals, we should keep our comments concise and to the point, and thereby make more time available to others and enable us to conclude the meeting at a reasonable hour. So you plant the seed of common sense before council, before we begin speaking at the start of the meeting. To me, that's a proactive approach. If a public is looking from the outside and says, yes, they want to almost applaud you for taking that initiative, so that they too can get a meeting that will end at a reasonable hour, will be able to go back home, knowing that their council is doing a great job, both time management and issues management. So does that answer the question about time management?
Yes, it does. Thank you. So you can say at the beginning of the meeting, please keep your, if it's going to be a lengthy meeting, please keep your comments to around 2 minutes.
Yeah, you can say that. It would be,
Thank you.
put it this way, if it was to be definitive with a stopwatch going when someone begins to speak, and then you let them know a minute and a half later, then you need for that the official endorsement of council for that limitation. But you could do it for what I call unanimous consent. Council, it would be really helpful if you could keep your comments to say no more than 2 minutes, just to enable us to move more expeditiously. So you're speaking not so much from you dictating this, but I need your help. We need to function as a team. And team is not a word that you will find in Robert's Rule of Order, but it's really essential to have the goodwill of everybody around the table so we can move council through sometimes complex issues, sometimes simpler issues in a timely way that enables us to make informed decisions. So it's complicated, and I can't do it alone as your mayor. I need your help. So a disposition like that, I think, is one that enlists the cooperation and support of council members, especially important when we deal with complex and difficult issues. So the language you choose. If you want to, Mr. Mayor, if it comes to any follow-up after a meeting, I can help you frame those. For me, they're natural because that's what I do all the time. But just putting the script, the language together to encourage cooperation, to encourage teamwork, to encourage support and timeliness of our comments. That's critical. We don't want to lose precious time at the beginning of the meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, we're so tired and so exhausted. We just want to get out of the room. And then we end up rushing the discussion and voting without having all the necessary debate. That's not good. That means the decision at the end of the meeting will not be an informed and solid decision as it could be. So
Okay, thank you.
That's how the math is supposed to work. Any more questions? So I think I addressed some of the issues that you raised, and I addressed the one that I saw. And if you want, we can take a short break and resume, let's say 7 minutes. Would that be okay? Would you like a break? Any objection?
No, a break is good. Thank you.
Would 10 minutes be okay?
Sure, that'll be great.
Okay.
Everybody else agree? 10 minutes?
Any objection? Okay, we'll talk about this thing about no objection after the break.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Good.
Mark?
Go ahead, Norton.
First of all, I'd like to make my apologies for the way I look. I've been drywalling all day when I heard about this meeting, so rather than take time to clean up, here I am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Glad
Pleasure
you're
to
there.
have you. Pleasure to have you. Thank you. Good to have you. So we're resuming 10 minutes. And by the way, if you have any questions that you want to raise when we're back, we'll give you a turn to do that. Everybody had their chance. So we'll just do that in a few minutes. So we'll get going in a couple minutes. So get your glass of water. If you eat, I will not be offended. That'll be fine. Okay, almost there. Let's take one more minute, give people a chance to get back.
I'm back.
Back. Welcome back, Councillor Kirchner. Okay, let's see. Is Councillor Tinsley back? Councillor Paulson? Maybe Councillor Cragg? I know that the mayor and Councillor Kirchner is here. So Councillor Paulson, if you're here, unmute and say hi.
Councillor Tinsley's here.
Councillor Tinsley is here? Oh,
Yeah.
you're here. Okay, great. And Paulson, Councillor Paulson?
Hi.
Aye. Oh, good. Okay. And I don't think Councillor Cragg. Councillor Cragg, did you make it? Okay, I don't hear any voices. So thank you. Welcome back. And so we have can potentially go until 9 o'clock. If we get saturated with hearing my voice at some point, I'll give you an option. There's some things that we still need to discuss this evening, so we'll for sure do that. So far it has been, my comment has been based on two things. One of them is what I observed in the meeting the taped meeting from October. And secondly, based on the question that you raised. So we can get back to this is the agenda that I usually cover. The session that I did on Monday was based on this agenda that's on the screen in front of you on the PowerPoint. So we will not cover it as is, but just want to describe it to you. Introduction to Robert's Rules of Order. The second part, looking at the common sense factor and how it manifests itself during meetings. The one that I do want to spend a good time on is the fundamental rules for debate, the OFEDS acronym that I was referring to. Shared decision making, I don't think we'll get into that discussion in any depth today, although we covered it in a way. And then one more aspect we need to cover is just more clarification on rules of order as they apply during meetings, which feels to me like that is an important subject to address. So you have a handout package that has more 27 pages, out of which we would use just a few. I have a book that one of the books that I've written is called 101 Boardroom Problems and How to Solve Them. And if the municipality wants to purchase copies of that, I would say that you can if you want. It's available. You can find the link through my website. It's sold through Civic Info BC. And if you want to purchase Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, the book that I showed you is 700 pages. You can. I don't think it will be as relevant or as applicable in its fullness. Just the parts that it will be useful are the parts that I described, and there will be a few more. Timing for today, we finish no later than 9 o'clock. Questions as we go along. Questions are, I want to make it a safe environment so you can get your questions. I sometimes say if people want to tape the presentations, they can, but so it becomes available for future reference. I always like to emphasize with sessions for local councils that I'm not your advisor on meeting procedure. Your advisors locally is usually what's called a corporate officer, and I believe Anne, your chief administrative officer, has been taking that role during meetings. And then I ask the question: is the agenda acceptable? And then say, is there any objection to the agenda? This is not exactly the agenda is not exactly like you see on the screen, but is the agenda acceptable? Let's pretend like I'm asking that question. And then I say, is there any objection? No objection, the agenda has been approved. So what I've done here is I've actually used a parliamentary tool that can simplify a meeting a bit. And so it's on page 10 of the handout package. I'm assuming you have it, at 27 page. Package. At the bottom of it, you will find reference to what's called unanimous consent. Bottom of page 10. Unanimous consent is an informal way of taking a vote used for routine and non-controversial decisions to expedite business. So for example, in this case, I've taken a vote on the agenda, although it's different from what you see on the screen. Is there any objection to the agenda? You would say at the beginning of the meeting, after you describe what are the items, you pause and say, there's no objection, the agenda has been approved. So it's been approved basically by the fact that nobody objected to the agenda. So Mayor, that's a good way to start. That's a well-documented procedure in Robert's Rules of Order. We don't have to have a mover and a seconder to the agenda. The agenda has been circulated. Are there any objection to the agenda circulated? You pause. There being no objection, the agenda has been approved. For routine and non-controversial, usually procedural decision, doing it in that way is okay. So I want to give you some examples of when you could use unanimous consent, and that's similar to what you did, Mr. Mayor, at the meeting on other issues, but for the following issues, it would be okay. Routine, non-controversial decisions. Agenda approval, for example, the agenda has been circulated, here are the items, any objection? If there are any changes to the agenda, is there any objection to changing the agenda and moving item number 7 ahead of number 3? Any objection? No objection. So we make those kinds of decisions. Decisions to do with time management, for example. Let's say that we have 3 significant items left on the agenda, and let's say we want to finish the meeting no later than 9 o'clock. So, and it's now 8 o'clock, let's say. Any objection to allowing 20 minutes per item? So we can conclude all items and give each of them 20 minutes. Any objection to allowing 20 minutes per item? No objection. We are set at 20 minutes for each of the 3 remaining items. You see, in those cases, looking for that unanimous consent by saying, is there any objection, similar to what you did at the meeting in October, is okay, because it's not a substantive decision, it's a procedural decision. It's simple, it's easy to progress in that way. Any objection? No objection. Another example will be friendly amendment. So I sometimes give the silly example that probably you never want to use in your meeting. Say we have a motion to purchase a new gavel for the chair. A new gavel at a cost not to exceed $25. That is called micromanagement. You don't want to micromanage. I'm just giving this for illustration purposes. So during the discussion of this profound motion to purchase a new gavel at a cost not to exceed $25, someone says, can we please add the words including taxes and delivery costs? So instead of processing that as an amendment with the debate and the vote by show of hands, we say, is there any objection to adding the words, including taxes and delivery costs? You pause. There being no objection, the amendment is adopted, and the main motion now reads to purchase a new gavel cost not to exceed $25, including taxes and delivery costs. So the amendment in this case was approved by unanimous consent. Nobody objected. It's not a big deal, so we may as well proceed by unanimous consent. Does that make sense? So any questions about unanimous consent? You'll find illustration, all the scripts, you could use them if you want. On pages 22 to 27 of the handout package, you'll find some examples of the use of unanimous consent, usually for friendly amendment or small decisions that really don't need the formality of a motion being debated and being voted on. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. It's not needed with small decisions like these. Are we doing okay? Any concerns? So, see, when I was saying earlier, don't just ask for those opposed, but in cases like these, you can say, is there any objection to doing X, Y, Z? Pause. Being no objection, we will do it. Any objection, for example, to taking a 10-minute recess? Let's say people have been sitting for a while and we just concluded a significant item. We want to give ourselves a break. Any objection to a 10-minute recess? Pause. No objection. We will recess for 10 minutes. Or at the end of the meeting, if we finish the business at hand, do we need a motion to adjourn? We could, but we don't have to. There being no further business to come before the meeting is adjourned. You pause, making sure that there isn't anything. If there isn't, the meeting is adjourned by unanimous consent. That's a valuable tool, useful tool to keep things moving without motions being formally voted on. So that's unanimous consent. I don't think we need to spend more time on this one, but we talked about the common sense factor, and what I think we'd like to move to is the OFEEDs rather than talk about those things. I just wanted to, let me just see where we are. Okay, so here it is. The OFEEDs acronym is on page 2 of the handout package. Fundamental principles for debates, the OFEED acronym and meeting procedures. I want to spend a bit of time on this, and please do interrupt me as I go through this so that we can get the full discussion that we need, because some of it could have been used at the meeting that I observed. So the story goes like this. People, it was a 1984 or 85, I was doing one of my first training session on Robert's Rule of Order. And in the middle of that session, a question came in that I didn't know quite what to do with at first. And so people were talking about, they said that we have a board of directors of 11 members. And he said we have a problem member on our board and we don't know what to do with him. And so the question that they were asking me, they said, this individual is disruptive at our meetings. He resorts to personal insults against some members. He takes forever to make his point. And so they said, we were thinking about taking measures to remove him from the board of directors, nonprofit organization. What measures can we take in order to remove him from the board? So I was taken aback by this because I didn't expect that question to come in, especially in our first class. I knew that Robert's Rule of Order has some procedures in the end, at the end of the book, about a disciplinary procedure against a member. But I was troubled by that because I didn't want to give them that tool when I didn't fully understand what the problem was. So this is what I ended up saying to them. I understand what you're looking for. You're looking for a punitive measure against an individual who is not working well within this board. But here's my question. Why are we talking about the individual instead of talking to the individual? That's what I asked them. I said, why don't we talk to this and find out what is it that motivates them and give them the feedback, and then maybe we get a different behavior. That was one thought that I had when I was at that question. It's a real story. It's this thing that happened in, as I said, one of my first workshops. The second thing that I was thinking of, we're thinking about this person as being bad, but we're not thinking about systemic weaknesses. And until we fix systemic weaknesses, even if we're successful in removing someone from office, someone else comes in a year later or 2 years later, but we never fix the system. So we're just as vulnerable as we were when we started. So what is the system that we're talking about? So have you been to a bad meeting? People interrupt each other in the middle of a sentence, or they get off-topic remarks. They talk about a subject that has very little to do with what's on the agenda right now. Or maybe we get involved in micromanagement and we talk about things that are not really the function of a council, but the function of the administration. Things that have to do with minor staff direction that council shouldn't be involved in, should be on a higher level. So are we off where we need to be? Number C, someone taking forever to make their point, taking 10 minutes instead of 2, or maybe too much time is spent on a specific item. So have you been to a meeting like that? And by the way, this is presentation that I was giving to in the local government leadership academy in BC after the 2018 election, and there were gatherings of newly elected mayors and councillors in different areas of the province, and I asked them if they have seen these things in meetings, and after each of them I get them to raise their hand. These were in-person presentation, and without hesitation, hands go up. Yes, I've seen that happen in meetings. D, have you seen a meeting being dominated? Someone having rebuttals back and forth, consuming 20, 30% of the time, and other people not being brought into the conversation, the domination. Yes, we've seen that. Personal attacks. People begin to talk about others as being dishonest and misguided, and they're having a hidden agenda here. So have you seen that happen? Yes, we've seen that happen. Have you seen the meeting environment becoming so toxic that it's people are afraid to say the things that they need to say, and so we end up not benefiting from significant nuggets of wisdom. So the question is, if those things happen in meetings, what do we say about it? So this is a sentence I gave them. If things go badly in a meeting, we have no option but to suffer, and then we can blame thee, and I put a blank in front of them, for not enforcing the rule. Fill the blank for me. And like a choir, without a moment hesitation, everybody yells, the mayor is the one. I think someone is unmuted. So I need you to mute yourself because I hear my own voice. Thank you. Okay, so these are the two notions. Number one, we blame the mayor for not enforcing the rules. We have no option but to suffer. Both of these are wrong. Here's what I say. Suffering is optional. If you choose to suffer, you can. And sometimes you need to tolerate imperfections in the meeting and not complain about everything. But if there is a problem and the mayor does not catch it, then everybody else has a role in terms of defending the process. So uh, let me see. Let's see what that looks like. This is a series of sentences that I shared with a group some time ago. I was invited to help a board of directors resolve a series of very difficult, poisonous issues that were really ruining the effectiveness of the board. So we worked on this. We worked on it for Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. Then we made some progress. I walked away from it, and 5 years later, I met one of those participants in a discussion in another setting, and he said, "Mr. Mina, you remember me from that meeting?" And I remembered the meeting. I said, "Yes, that meeting from hell." And he said, "Yes, it was that meeting." And he said, "You taught us 5 sentences in that meeting, and I'll always remember those sentences." I said, "I did. What were those sentences?" He said, "The process is your best friend. Learn how the process works and follow it willingly. Make sure that others know the process and follow it willingly. And when the process is broken, defend it. If you defend the process, it will defend you." So I remembered the sentences. I remember why I said them. And so I use those sentences and I share them with you. Anytime things go wrong with the process, remember, it's your best friend. You learn how it works. You follow it. You make sure other people, including members of the community, for example, in the case of a big public hearing, when things get nasty, make sure that they understand the process and they follow it because they understand it. When the process is broken, defend it. It does not mean that you begin to yell at people. It just means that you defend it elegantly and nicely. And then if you defend the process, it defend you. I need to explain to you where I'm going with this. What is the process? Page 2 in the handout package, 6 ingredients, quite essential. When people ask me to teach Robert's Rules of Order in less than 1 hour, that's all I do. I teach the feeds. And it tends to solve most meeting problems that I have seen. 6 ingredients. Ingredient number 1, you look in the middle of page 2 of the handout package. Order, 1 person speaks at a time. So we don't have people interrupting each other in the middle of a sentence. 5 people speaking at the same time. That doesn't make any sense. 1 person speaks at a time, and the mayor is the chief defender of that, in that the mayor will establish the speakers list. So is there any debate on the motion? Please raise your hand. Let me know that you want to speak. I'll create a speakers list. Speaker number 1 is Councillor Kirchner. Speaker number 2 is Councillor Paulson. So we'll go in that order and other people can join the list. Councillor Kirchner, go ahead. So simple. And if someone jumps ahead of someone or interrupt them in the middle of a sentence, Councillor so-and-so, wait for your turn, please. You're number 3 on the list. Right now we're hearing from Councillor Kirchner. So we're gentle, we're respectful, and we're firm. So it doesn't need a loud voice to defend the process in that way. So if we have by chance 2 or 3 people are speaking at the same time, Council, we need to have 1 person speaking at a time. Let me create the speakers list right now. So Councillor A is first, Councillor B is second, Councillor A, go ahead. So it's just simple. We need to know what the process is, and we need to make sure everybody understands it and follows it. So second one, focus on the current agenda item and on the core mandate of the group. So if by chance there is a motion on the floor and someone deviates from it and begin to tell us what a wonderful movie they saw yesterday, and we should all make sure to see that movie, not to miss it, it's only here for one night. Council so-and-so, can we please focus on the agenda? We can have that discussion after the meeting. So we're not saying to anyone you're a bad person. We're just saying we have a process. And the process is well understood, well established. Let's follow it. If we want to be social, we can be social after the meeting. Okay? So we say no to the person, but we say yes to our best friend. Because if we don't focus, if we don't become disciplined in how we run the meeting, there's a chance that the meeting will go much longer than it needs to be, and we will not accomplish a focused and well-flowing discussion. So that's important. Focus. Third one, efficiency. So we discussed this one already. Let's just remind ourselves. We focus on 2 things in terms of efficiency. How much time does an agenda item take? And number 2, how long do people take to make their point when they get recognized to speak? And both of those are critical. Both of them are quite important. So if an item is small, but by chance people get to be social with it and goes all over the map and consumes 15 minutes instead of 5, it means that those 10 minutes, 10 extra minutes will not be available later on for something else. That means we need to kind of have an estimation there before the meeting begins, estimate approximately how much items we'll need, which one is substantive, which one will need maybe 5 minutes, advise council of your assessment and manage the meeting so that the items, we don't have a situation when the lower the stake, the higher the argument. So sometimes that's a reality. That's how the math works. That an item that is small ends up consuming this much time, a lot more time than an item that really needs that time. So we need to set those time, at least tentative time limits with council's cooperation, usually by unanimous consent. So council will have 3 significant items, a grand total of 1.5 hours to deal with them. So if there is no objection, I'm going to set half an hour per item. Is there any objection? No objection. It is so set, and we proceed. And let's say the first item we have covered already 20 minutes. As a reminder, council, we have 10 minutes left for this item. So can we begin to close off and get ready for the vote in 10 minutes or less? So using common sense, using gentle suasion, gentle reminder of this precious commodity called time that often people never pay attention to. So let's make sure that we make it front and center so we don't run into a rush hour mode towards the end of the meeting. Efficiency is significant. We don't want to shortchange the discussion on an item that is later on the agenda and becomes victim to that sense of, come on, let's get out of here already. Uh, in this case, it becomes a toxic meeting environment. People will not dare speak when the colleagues are impatient and just want to end the meeting already because they're in pain. So let's make sure we never get to that place by managing proactively from the beginning of the meeting, managing time. Managing time per person would mean that we are careful in how we communicate. This is the thing that I found. And I was observing in this instance a regional board. You have the Strathcona. I was watching a different regional board. And in some instances, people had the habit of what I call going in circle. It's not clear where they're going. Nobody really can tell what their point of view is. Just go in circle. And they go in circles some more. And 5 minutes later, they finally stop talking and they try to figure out what exactly was the point of view that they made. And it's impossible to tell. So this is a suggestion I would make to any of you. You want to make a point? There's a simple, disciplined way of making that point. My point of view is this. Let's say, my point of view is that this proposal is a great idea, and I want to tell you why. Reason number one is, and you say that reason concisely, clearly. Reason number two is, da 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 da. da. Say it concisely and clearly. And for those two reasons, I'm in favor of this motion, and I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of it as well. Period. How much time would it take? Maybe 2 minutes. You can say a lot in 2 minutes if you're disciplined, if you're focused, and cover it much more clearly, both for your colleagues around the table and for the public who is listening in, and for them seeing someone going in circles is not exactly amusing. It's really quite frustrating. So let's make the meeting go dynamic and make it and effective in terms of people being able to listen to you and understanding what is it that drives you to say, I want to speak in favor or against this proposal. So clear organization. I speak in favor or I speak against, and here are my main concerns. Concern number one is, concern number two is, and for those reasons, I'm inclined to vote against the motion as of now. Clear, to the point. It's not parliamentary procedure. It's not rules of order, but it's common sense. So efficiency per agenda item per person. Equality is another interesting one. This one is actually a Robert's Rules issue, which says this: if anyone wishes to speak for the second time on the same issue, other people who want to speak on it for the first time get priority. So no one gets to speak a second and sometimes third time, as is the case in some councils, when someone else is just kind of sitting there and raising their hand and they get ignored. That's not fair. So we want equality, meaning someone who wants to speak for the second time on the same issue must wait until first-time speakers have spoken. I hope it's clear. So if someone wants to speak a second time, just a moment, Councillor just lays ahead of you, so he gets to speak ahead of you. So that's that for fairness, but it's also for informed voting. So here's the difficulty. If we don't monitor the distribution of airtime among the various members, we end up missing potentially significant nuggets of wisdom that happens to reside in the head of someone who may be a little bit more hesitant or maybe newer to council, and they will not complain. So it's not good. So we say, is there anybody who has not spoken who wishes to speak? And you look around the room for people who have not spoken, and they get priority over those who have already spoken. So you're saying no to the more eager, enthusiastic person who wants to speak a second and maybe a third time, and you give priority to someone who has not spoken, and you enrich the conversation by doing that. So I want to share this example with you because this is, to me, the number 4, the equality is like a religion for me. So I just recall some time ago, I was working with the First Nation, with the chief and council. And we were working for 2 days. in the first half of the first day, this is what happened. I noticed a pattern when 3 of the 7 council members were always talking, and they were having rebuttals back and forth. So I just doing a math in my head. How much of the time was consumed by 3 and what was happening to the 4? So one of those, I just turned to him at some point, as my usual habit is after being in this field, and say, so-and-so, thank you A, thank you B, thank you C. Phil, what do you think about this? So he was the quiet individual who said nothing until then. And then he spoke. And when he spoke, people turned in his direction. It's like, wow. And then someone said, when Phil speaking, he said, Phil, that was so smart, so interesting. You should speak more often in our meetings. That's what they said to him. And so it was so heartwarming to hear that. And for me, all it took was just to pay attention, someone that hasn't spoken, and give them the priority that they need. So first-time speakers get priority over second-time speakers. In their case, meant that they heard a nugget of wisdom that they would not have heard had I not done what I did. And so guess what? As the session progressed, we would get to a certain point several times, and then his own colleagues, Phil's own colleagues, would say to him, Phil, what do you think about that? Even though he didn't raise his hand, because they were used to bringing in silent individuals, people who are maybe habitually shy and more hesitant in sharing. Maybe they're newer to the body and won't speak quite as readily, and bring them and their input into the conversation. So it's not only for fairness, it's also for informed voting. In other words, if we have all these nuggets of wisdom, some of them happen to reside in the heads of individuals who are naturally quieter and less assertive. Let's make sure that we make the efforts of bringing them in. So just food for thought on that one. Fifth one, decorum. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at the conversation itself, and when people disagree with one another, let's say it's a contentious issue on which there are different perspectives, different opinions. So the question is, do people cross the line? And if they don't like a proposal, they can potentially attack the proponent. He says, so-and-so made this proposal, and so-and-so is speaking in favor of this proposal, but he or she is politically motivated. He or she has a hidden agenda here. A lot of things that he's not telling us besides the things that he does. Guess what? We moved away from attacking the proposal and we're attacking the proponent. That's a completely a no-no. This is what I say. I'm not looking for perfection in parliamentary procedure in meetings, Robert's rules or otherwise. What I am looking for is some things that are very fundamental. So people ask me the question, remember one occasion there was a clerk who was asking me, a municipal clerk who was asking me that question, what is the hill that I should die on? In other words, Robert's Rules has 700 pages. A lot of it never comes up in meetings, and a lot of it seems to be kind of minor. And so this is what I say. This is one example of the hill that you will want to not say necessarily die on, but you want to protect the process when someone shifts away from attacking the proposal and they begin to attack the proponent. They begin to question the motivation, the honesty of an individual. That's absolutely prohibited. So chair, if you have a gavel, bring it to a meeting for that potential eventuality, because the person who could violate that could be a member of council. I hope not. But it could be also a member of the community who is frustrated and beginning to point fingers and call names and suggest hidden motives, and none of that is acceptable. So let's draw the line on this one, decorum critical, because it also affects number 6. And number 6 is the safe meeting environment. We would never want to be in a situation when someone has a significant nugget of wisdom, but it might be a dissenting view that might be annoying to some people. And they notice the people being so enthusiastic about something, and they're afraid of saying something that would hurt their feelings. That would hurt, oh, they seem so enthusiastic. You know what? I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm not going to say anything. And guess what? The loser can be the community. Because if there is a dissenting view in the room, we want to make sure that it's safe for the individual to share it, because that's our responsibility, is to invite and legitimize dissenting views and listen to them with an open mind. So some organizations suffered because of it. There was someone in the room who had something to say about something, but they saw all the happy faces around the room and they were afraid to raise those points because the meeting environment in a way was toxic and people didn't even know that. All they noticed was a lot of enthusiasm. So here is another one. Suppose one day we move away from COVID and we have an in-person large community meeting. And let's say that you were looking for input on a sensitive, controversial decision that you're about to consider, and you want community input before you go there. And imagine there are a couple of hundred people in the room, and divided, let's say, about 70% of them on one side, 30% of them on the other side. And when someone speaks representing the minority view in the room, the 30%, they get heckled and booed. And when someone is speaking on the majority side, they get cheered on and rah, rah, applauded, and all of these things happen. Is there a risk here that this behavior and this dynamics will stifle necessary conversation, stifle dissenting views? People will be so afraid to speak. And here it is. My job is to be afraid for you. I know it's a small village and I think it would never happen, but it has happened in small settings when the loud voices drowned the soft voices. And the result of that was, in at least one instance, that minority groups hired legal counsel to represent them, legal counsel, and ended up taking the organization to a tribunal to defend the fact that they never defended the process. Remember those 6 words: your best friend. Make sure that everybody understands it. So suggestion is, if it comes to one of those meetings when things could get charged and could have majority against the minority in the community, and that's not unlikely to happen. If you look at some of the priorities that you want to instate over the coming year, it could be that things will be so divided within the community that it could get into one of those meetings. And so the preventative medicine goes something like this. At the beginning of a meeting, we need to introduce our best friend, the process. You say, we understand that the issues coming before you today are difficult. We know that. That's why we're looking for your input. But having said that, we need to make sure that you follow a clear and clean process that will make the meeting environment safe, because we want to learn from all input that is available to us in this room. And in light of that, any applause will not be tolerated. Any heckling, any booing, any cheering, none of that can occur, because we want to make sure that it is safe for all perspectives to emerge and enrich the conversation and enable us to make an informed decision with the benefit of input from a very proud democracy that doesn't need the aid of heckling and clapping and booing. None of those will be necessary. So we expect that you will follow these rules and none of those behaviors will be tolerated. A statement like that from the mayor or anyone who's chairing a meeting in defense of the process proactively before you get into some of those behaviors, I think is essential. Process is your best friend. Make sure that everybody, including in those instances, including the community, understands it, follows it of its own free will. And when the process is broken, you need to come in and defend it. And defend it is not angry. Defend it is simply, excuse me, sir, we need to get back on topic. We need to make sure that we talk about the issue, the proposal, not the proponent. No loud voices are required here. We don't need it because the process itself is strong enough. We just need to resuscitate it if you want, to bring it to life. So it's there to help you, help the community endure while it's dealing with some very difficult and controversial issues. And you know what, just based on the fact, small village, and could be some significant initiative that you want to proceed to make progress on in the coming year and maybe beyond, but at least until the next election, until the end of 2022. And some of them may lead to heated discussions. And substantial differences of opinion in the community, and the only way to endure that is by making sure everybody follows a process where we debate issues, where introduce dissenting views, and we learn from one another. And council, with the benefit of it, council can make informed decisions that will withstand the test of time. So, OFIDs, any questions so far? I hope I didn't talk for too long. I told you that this is a subject that when I teach parliamentary procedures, I spend a fair amount of time on this one because it's at the core of where issues are. Any questions? And by the way, I'm noting that this meeting is being recorded, and I think it's wonderful. I'm quite happy if you want to use that as a view the taping, and if community members want to view the taping, they can too, so that it's there for you. It doesn't end, the learning does not end when this session is over. So thank you, staff, for recording. Okay, so any questions so far on the feeds? Mayor?
Sorry, earlier you mentioned about getting engagement from all the council. Now, if you found in the past, that's a very difficult goal to achieve. And there is always, because of, say, personality conflict or what have you, you can't get that engagement. No matter if you've tried, you said instead of talking about, talk to the person, and all those avenues have been cut off. What would you suggest?
Okay. So I guess this is what I would say. We need to find out what the problem is and maybe approach it from with a bit of a gentler approach. I don't know if yeah. So I guess what I would envision is let's define what the problem is jointly. Invite a conversation with an individual and just say, here is something. I'm thinking about this not through my own lenses, but through the lens of the community looking in. And when they see a certain dynamics from the community's perspective, it's puzzling. We need to, even if not required legal, we need to function as a team. So I need your help in joining us and working together, despite the fact that we may have had differences of opinion in the past. And differences of opinion are fine, as long as we share them, learn from one another, and make informed decisions. Is there any difficulty you have with that? It's a kind of a negotiation you do with individuals. With what guides you, the premise of the negotiation is that we need, for the sake of the community that all of us care about, we need to think about how do we work together and how do we deal with differences of opinion. And I need your help. We need your help. And if I did not convey it effectively enough in the past, I'm conveying it to you now, honestly and sincerely. I need your help, and we need your help to work together for the good of the community that I'm sure you care about, I care about, all of us care about. So that needs to be the disposition in order to gradually move away from it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's doable. I think it's possible that if tensions have built over time, it would take some time to build trust, to build respect. But I think if we go at it from the perspective of the community needs us to be team members, to work as team members. And team does not mean that we're unanimous on everything. It just means that we listen, we learn, we share our views, and there may be times that we'll get unanimous decisions. There may be times that we'll get divided decisions. But we need to have the debate. We need to listen with open minds, and we need to make decisions together as a team. Yep. The team does not mean unanimity. It does not mean 7-0 all the time. But people owe it to the community to listen first. And once they listen and learn, then they can make an informed decision as to whether they want to be in favor or against it. Okay. I'm trying to respond in a way that does not identify any individual. So I hope, please appreciate that as well. So anyone else, any other questions about the OFEEDs or about anything else? Councillor Kirchner? if you want to speak, ask a question, make a comment, unmute yourself, and let me know.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
You good? Okay, that's good. I wish you could see me, but that I will. I will. It seems like the PowerPoint does not allow me to show my pictures, but yeah. So anyway, any other question, Councillor Tinsley? No, you need to
Oh,
unmute.
thank you. Thank you. I'll just I think Mayor Mark had an excellent question about engagement. And in terms of us being on camera in front of the public and wanting to control that, I believe that's an important dynamic. So I'm just kind of asking you, really, it's coming back to the process, right? It's saying we've got to stick to the process. We've got to follow the OFEEDS formula, you know, without using that word, but maintain that decorum at all costs for the benefits of the community.
Yeah, it's for, I guess, the process is critical. It's important that the decision you make end up being the decision you make. So I can't say it should be in favor, it should be against. But it needs to be a good, healthy process. It needs to be one where you have a foundation to start with, knowledge-wise. And it's the job of the administration, the management team, to present you with a foundation for a decision. So it becomes really important that you have that, those feet on the ground, the legalities, the finances, the impact of what you do on the very limited human resources you have. You have 5 staff, and if you were to give them everything that need to be done in the village, they will be super overloaded. They may be overloaded already, I don't know. So we need to consider those as well. So knowledge-based decisions means that we need to have all those parameters presented to us proactively by the administration, and administration need to be feeling safe that it's okay for them to present views that might be like a wake-up call. That's fine. So they need to be safe too. And in some instances, I find staff members don't feel safe. They're afraid of being criticized, and being criticized publicly in the community that they live in may not be comfortable. So we want you to be honest. We want you to give us the truth, even if it is an inconvenient truth. We want to know all the facts. So that's number one. Let's make sure that it's here. Let's make sure that at the table, everybody sits there with an open mind. They want to learn. They may have some biases. They may have some views. That's okay. But we also want to come in like a sponge. We want to learn from the administration. We want to learn from our colleagues. And we want to also learn from the public, the citizens. Sometimes the citizen may present us with quality input. Sometimes it's less of a quality input, but it's input. So we want to learn from that as well. So the disposition for each of you, I think, need to be one of learners. So like judges, you sit at the bench. There's 5 of you as judges. You're a panel of judges. You want to, before you render a verdict, before you render a decision, you want to have all the facts in front of you, all the foundation in front of you. Some of it comes from the administration. Some of them come from the community, and some of it would come from your colleagues around the table, your fellow judges, if you want to call it that. You want to hear their input and integrate it into your decision-making process. That's what I think is needed to make the process credible. Okay. I hope I'm addressing it. Anything else on that one?
Yes. Just to
Yeah.
clarify further. So one of the things we deal with in the community is what you talked about earlier, the 90% who don't come unless there's something crucial to them. And it's a community where there are some very major issues that we're dealing with. And we've had excellent support from our administrative staff, but as a small community dealing with quite a few major things coming forward, can you give us some ideas of how to inspire more community involvement while allowing us to lead the process, shall we say?
Yeah. And thank you. And that is clearly one of your most important partner is a community that you serve. And you have the advantage compared to my own municipality, Vancouver, when we have 500,000 people, maybe more, to reach out to all of them would be an impossibility. So the risk for my own municipality is that we get a group who is organized and packs the public gallery in a city, and you get the impression that this is the citizens, when in fact it might just be a minority group. The advantage in a small community and the luxury that you have that you connected the community a lot more. So having methods of reaching out to the community, making sure that the true voice of the community and then the balanced, diverse voices are introduced, and you don't get to be persuaded by a small group who happen to be more active than others. So when I was describing earlier the level of engagement, in a way, I'm wondering if in a small village, how many of them are acting as customers, as entitled customer, and how many of them are at that higher level of engagement where they want to be looking at it from a less selfish or self-centered perspective, entitlement perspective, and moving away to, well, we've got to work together. The village is facing some challenges, infrastructure being one of them, but maybe others. And we all pay the price for dealing with it. Can we be involved? Can there be a significant community consultation program that will engage not only those who naturally will come to your meetings? I think in the last meeting, I saw one individual who had a few questions. But can we engage the community more effectively? I would think that would be just looking at it as an outsider, that would be a relatively inexpensive investment, basically investment of time. All you need in that case is to organize an agenda that has clear definition of issues that need to be addressed and on which you look for input, and encourage citizens to study the issues before they give you their input. In other words, we want to have quality input, not the least common denominator. We want to get some quality input. And so you set things up and encourage that level of higher level engagement that in a big city like mine would be more difficult to get. I think in a big city like mine, you could well get the lowest common denominator, and the broadly representative input will not be possible to get. I think as a small village, you have an advantage because you know them, you know all the residents, they know you. Just reach out and bring in the voices that don't naturally come to the table. Am I making sense? I may sound like a dreamer, or I don't know. It's. I think small village give you that advantage. It may seem like a disadvantage to be, I mean, to raise taxes in a small village. If you wanted to do everything you wanted that needs to be done, infrastructure, I don't know, tax base will need to go up substantially, maybe. So you want to involve those who will pay the price. Those who will pay the price if things are not done. They will pay the price if things are done. So I think maybe that's one good component to introduce. And Mayor, I think that thinking about individuals who may have been offside, I think that's something that can create a sense of unity in the community where, say, if you have, let's say, I'm being optimistic, let's say you get 150 of the 300 or so getting involved, and they're telling you in no uncertain terms, here are some of the things that we need, and here is the process we need, and we need for you as our elected council to function as our leadership team. The word is team. All of you work together. We need you to listen and learn from one another. And so in that case, you know what? Public involvement can have a way of changing the relationships within council too. Okay. Yeah, Mayor, go ahead.
I think because of in the last year with COVID, it's been very challenging to try to build a team, and that goes to group, because we haven't been able to, really be together for a lot of the meetings or any of the meetings. We've had a few people at some of the meetings in terms of council. So COVID has sort of hindered, I think, some of the growth that we could have had as a team. So it's difficult. There's no barbecues. There's no, social aspect to it. So it seems to be delayed in getting that team environment. And I'm not sure how to get around that at this point.
Yeah, and so and to me, that's the place for the team to talk about these kinds of things. So maybe in the next public meeting, um, there's a conversation about that with an outreach going to the community ahead of time and saying, look, we face this major challenge with the pandemic. Our capacity to reach out to you and to actually see you in person and shake your hands and learn from you is diminished, or is substantially lower than it would be if COVID had not been around. So we need your help. We want to engage you. We have several things that we want to accomplish, and we know that for this term of office, we have a year to accomplish some things. And we need to make sure that we run some ideas by you and we get your input. And the broader the input, the more compelling it will be on us. So you can propose some mechanism for facilitating that community engagement, and just do whatever you can to, I don't like the word selling, but selling them on the idea of attending it. You will be listened to. It will be that kind of an environment. We want to have a safe meeting environment. We're going to do our best to keep people on topic. And out of that, we are very optimistic that what will come up is a stronger community and increased capacity for us to deal with significant issue. And I would think that if there is that sense of community, if I think about that motion that might have come up to do away with the incorporation and to become an electoral area and join the Strathcona Regional District, would not be contemplated in that kind of a setting where we say we are proud of being our own entity and we want to remain our own entity, and let's see what we can do, each of us, each of the 300 of us can do to achieve it and support our council in achieving it. So again, I don't know what the right solution is, but you are currently that entity. It's just a case of let's boost it, let's support it, and talk to the people, to the citizens who are our partners in this, and engage them more. So again, think about investment in something that costs money, such as infrastructure, such as any of the things that need to be done. That's one thing. But you need to have the support of the individual who will pay for all of this. And so citizen engagement seems to be really quite critical. But teaching them the OFEEDs, teaching them how to use it, how to have a strong, healthy process where we learn from the democracy that we're fortunate to live in. Small villages is not a bad thing. It can be a good thing. Easier to build community. Am I making sense?
Yes, thank you.
I'm planting seeds today, and we have 4 of the 5 here at least. So at least from what I can tell, so 4 of you are here. So if you share that vision, I would think number 5 will join in that team. I'm not the one to say that they will or won't, but I would think that we want to make the environment such that it would be compelling for people to function as not necessarily in agreement always with one another. In fact, it's better that there will be some disagreement. It's healthy, but partners in the process. Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Kirchner, more to add?
No, I'm good, and I agree with everything that you're saying.
Okay, good. And just trying to see if Councillor Paulson, are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, any comments?
I like a few of your ideas. The one about looking through the rear view mirror, I'd rather look through the front windshield because it's much bigger and you see what can lie ahead.
Good.
And that's one of the struggles we have with our council is, or with the customers that attend, is they may be the minority, but they seem to control the majority of the meetings. And so finding ways to make the other 90% of the people that don't come to the meetings comfortable is a real struggle for us, because most people just shake their heads and leave in disgust. So trying to look forward and make people feel comfortable and feel safe and feeling confident enough to speak out, it's a real challenge.
Yeah, and it's good to recognize that it is, because it is, especially the last one, creating a safe meeting environment. It's difficult. It's challenging, and it's. I think the idea is to say that upfront. We want to make it safe for those of you who would normally be silent in meetings, for you to share your nugget of wisdom, so all of us can be enriched by the knowledge and wisdom that exists in the room. And in light of that, you put your feet in front of them. So I think that it's powerful. I've seen it transform meetings from complete chaos to something that was civilized, respectful, and orderly, and achieved much different results. So it could be that this is one of the things that you need to share with your community and inform and educate as to the benefit of having a good process and what impact that can have on achieving a much broader, much more broadly based consensus in the community as to what needs to be done. Now, you don't have a duty to do everything that the community tells you, and you're not taking votes in those gatherings, but you are taking the pulse of the community. And because it's genuine and it's balanced and it's credible as a process, I think the potential for that is very, very large. And guess what? The more I think of it, engagement does not have to be expensive. From a tax dollars, it really is like an investment of time. And so, yes, staff will need to be involved in that investment. But I think the four of you and the counselor who is not here will join you. Then maybe you see a different way out of it. That's why I put in the levels of engagement earlier on. So someone said some people will look at the way things are and ask why, while others will look at the way things could be and ask why not.
That's
We
right.
deserve it. The community deserves it. It's just that we need to find the process that will engage the community in the knowledge, the wisdom, just the passion that they bring. It's a beautiful place that you live in. So doing something, bringing the community together is possible. It's just that in the absence of a good process, it can become the lowest common denominator, the tyranny, or can almost describe it as a tyranny of the minority, but it's not because the majority doesn't want to speak, but it's that the process is weak. So invest in a good process, and then the likelihood or the potential for bringing in a much richer conversation and deliver a much stronger and enduring and sustainable outcome. To me, if I think about a year ahead and then next election, I don't know. It's not really my concern, but in the year ahead, that's under your immediate control, can transform this community, can transform this council, can transform the village into something magnificent, in which it is already physically. It's just the spirit needs to be there. If I'm sounding like a preacher, I apologize.
Good.
Okay, so anything else? Any other questions, comments? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Tinsley.
Just around simplification and getting people involved. There's some major things that have to be dealt with in the community. You know it. We've all talked about infrastructure.
Yeah.
From my perspective, and you're talking about ratios, the 90%, and it's the same here as in a large community.
Yeah.
Can you see the validity in trying to simplify the reality of what is coming down the pipeline to the public now, to help to encourage them to participate early? I mean, we have some studies going on around things, but it's quite clear, basically, simply things that are going to have to be done in a major way.
Yeah.
And I think as a council, we've debated things around simple questions versus a lot of information, and our administrative staff in a small community only has so much time to generate absolute details. Can you speak to that validity of trying to, as leaders, bring that to the front?
Yeah, I'll put it this way. And by the way, I stopped the PowerPoint because no, we covered the things that we need to cover, and now we can see me. So this is what I see, that not only is it valid, it makes sense. So I think we, instead of looking for obstacles, we look for opportunities, and sharing it in that honest, genuine way with the people you care about, the people that you ran to serve, is a way of building that sense of a team, not only among the 5 of you, but among all 300, and communities become stronger, become more vibrant, a happy place that people love to live in. And because of it, they will make sacrifices, they will make compromises for, and maybe agree to levy or something that will financially support the improvement of the priorities that you define as a leader, and that are brought to them for some, not for votes, but for some discussion. So that engagement, I think, is an investment. Yeah. I don't know if I'm answering sufficiently, but it feels like the answer is yes. It feels like it. And Anne is your CAO, Ms. McDonald. You had your hand up. We need you to unmute.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to that discussion about engaging the public and clarifying goals. I think it's really important that council updates its strategic plan every year. Of course, council's planning to do that on the 20th. And the strategic plan really helps focus on what the key goals are. For example, we know, for example, that there's the master water study that council has to have done. There's several other things that have been passed by resolution. And I think really having a crisp plan with a focus, because so many requests and things come to council that can, push council off its track. I really liked your explanation of looking through the rearview mirror. I appreciate what Councillor Paulson said about the bigger picture forward. There is something to help council in looking back at saying, okay, these were our main goals. This is what we stayed focused on. This is what we accomplished. And I think it's quite important now because there is only the 1 year left. And, there's a fair bit of investment that's been done by all of the councillors and the mayor to sort of take on these roles. And so, hopefully there's a following term, but, that's the advantage of focusing, I think, on key strategic goals that can then become familiar to the public, particularly when we have to go out for voter assent. Thank you.
So I think the idea is, and thank you, Anne. I think the idea is just to look for that balance. There's some people who would more naturally gravitate towards that community involvement, and some of them may be on a positive, some of them may be on a we got to stop any increase in taxation. That could be another one. So I think in the end it would be somewhere in the middle where we create the right balance, the right combination of forward movement and looking after people, after community, listening to community resistance and saying, well, let's learn from you, and so proceed more cautiously in some instances, maybe more aggressively in other instances. But if it's a team effort, and if somehow magically the team grows from being the 5 of you goes to something more substantial, even if it became 30%, maybe 60, 70, 80 people, that's a start. It's a very good start. Much more so than 1 person or 2 or 3 or 4 in the public gallery want to speak to you at the end of meetings. Okay. So I see that as being a part of the strategic direction, process-wise. You want to build that sense of partnership with the community. Yeah. Any more? Yeah.
Uh,
I just
Yes.
noticed that I didn't undo them with the video, so now you can see.
Okay. So how would you suggest we engage and get that, engage the public and have them be a part of this process, have them attend the meeting and feel a part of it? What would you suggest?
Okay, I think what it start with is planting the seed. So maybe at the next, either at the next meeting, as an opening statement by the mayor. Just putting in a full statement to the extent of we've just been through a problem-solving session, to a workshop setting, and if you want to watch it on it, all the sessions are recorded and they're online, so you're welcome to watch it. But a conclusion from this is as follows, and a conclusion is that we need to reinforce our link with the community, and so we cannot do it alone. We're just giving you a heads up that we want to engage in that effort. And then this is the help that we need from you. These are the things that could make it ineffective. There's a thing that could make it effective. We need you to engage on that level. You can even explain the feeds in terms of when you convene those, at least for the time being, maybe online meeting, virtual meetings, and what are the drawbacks of it and how you intend to deal with them. So something like that. And so it could be a verbal dimension to this, namely the mayor at the beginning of the meeting, hopefully with the support of council, coming up with a statement, and then newspaper. So basically it's gradually spreading the word, and then that leading to different methods of community engagement. So I think it's a gradual process. It will not happen overnight, but it's going to be very deliberate about it, have a planned process, and I don't know that I can come up with all of it on the fly, but it would take some thinking. But I think all five need to be involved in setting that plan and then launching it. Am I making sense? I don't certainly don't want to press anyone to go in a direction unless it feels like it's the right direction for you. And if you want to think about it more without me being in the room, then that's okay too. I'm not married to any one direction or another. It just feels based on the conversation that would be a productive way to go. But in the end, it's your decision. Please don't do anything because ELI MINA says. It has to be right for your community. Okay.
It seems to
Councillor.
me, yeah, Councillor. It seems to me, since I've been in Sayward, the most engaged people become is when they're attending a get together where there is food involved. Food is the main attractor, and so looking forward to having some. We had several community dinners that were free, and the last one was canceled because of COVID. But there was over 100 people that attended those
Wow.
those dinners, and I think if we have the opportunity at some later date to hold a dinner and then lock the doors and keep all those people captive there and get some input from them, it would we could maybe regain their respect and their comfort at coming to a meeting where everyone can speak freely and express their views without condemnation. The rest.
Fear. Right. Yeah, that's building community, and I know that having food is certainly one thing that is enriching the experience and gives the incentive to at least draw people there, and then once they're there, you have the conversation. And so maybe the thought is this one: if you want to proceed in a grounded and responsible way, let's find out from the provincial health officer regulations what can be done despite of COVID. So making sure that all presentations, all discussions are safe. So like Dr. Borner-Henry says, be calm, be kind, be safe. So that's important too. And within the confines of that, defining what that would look like, what that would be like, but also being disciplined in running those events so that it's not just about food, although food is nice to have, but it's also about gathering the wisdom that's available to us in all of the room, not only in those who are naturally inclined to go to a microphone and speak. So it just means that what I do if I lead a workshop with any more than 10 people in the room, we sometimes break into small discussion group with distancing. So let's make sure that the distancing is always here, and then we get broader input because we engage more people in the conversation. So we can encourage, if the group, let's say, each group has 5 or 6 or 7 people, give the task to engage every single one of them in the conversation on specific topics. So then you get to benefit the pulse of the community. So there's two things: the pulse of the community in terms of input, but also the engagement. It creates a sense of we are in this together. We have the problems. It's not the council problems only. There are decision makers. We all of us share the responsibility in identifying the problem and identifying some potential solutions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So is this helpful? It's getting to be close to 9 o'clock. I hope we made some progress. Any additional comments? We could finish, like I said, a little bit before 9. It's now 1:45. But I sometimes say it's better to quit while you're ahead. But how are we doing?
We're good. I personally just want to thank you for taking the time. This has been very informative. We haven't had the opportunity to have any formal training for that because of COVID, and UCBM is not there, and so on and so forth. And we've had a tough time getting most of council together to be able to do this. So thank you. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And my greatest reward would be if it makes a difference. Makes a difference in the community, makes a difference in the way you govern, and my hope is that council who is missing will join this effort enthusiastically, because you could see the difference that it can make. It can make the impact of your collective vision and you working in work well together as a team will be pronounced, I think, because then you're not looking at Robert's Rules of Order, you're not looking at the vagaries of how things get done during a meeting. You're looking at what is it that we see a year down the road, and what is it we need to do now, looking forward, to make sure that that indeed happens, with the support and with the engagement and meaningful engagement of the community, because you have the luxury with a smaller community to have much more engagement. And Ms. McDonald, you have a comment to make. You have your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you. And I also wanted to thank you for your presentation. I thought it was really helpful, but I also wanted to thank council for investing the 3 hours tonight. I know there's always things coming at you. I'm sending you countless number of reports and emails. And so I really appreciate that you could take 3 hours, because this is not my expertise. I don't have the 38 years that Eli has, but I really wanted to see that you be successful because of the efforts that you've put in to date. And I think it's really worth investing in yourself. So thank you for that. It makes it easier.
Yeah, I see. I applaud you. Yeah, it certainly was a delight to work with you. I think, as you might have noticed, the quotes from Robert's Rule of Order were limited to 2.
Yes.
If you remember those, one of them: no rules will take the place of tact and common sense. And remember some years ago when I was doing a presentation to a group of municipal clerks in New Brunswick, and kept on talking about common sense for 2 full days, if you can believe it, without falling asleep. And then at the end of the day, someone handed this little note to me, and the note said, common sense is the least common of all the senses. So I thought, how true. This is exactly what it is. So let's make sure it's here in the front end, it's driving us, instead of worrying about motions being moved, seconded. All of these are kind of the trappings of parliamentary procedure, but the substance of what you do and how you do it, the engagement, the knowledge-based decisions, all of those are quite a bit more important. So if, yeah, so I'm say that thank you. Nice to have my work appreciated. And Mayor, go ahead.
I just also wanted to thank council and thank Lisa for setting up where I can see you all and be a part of it. So thank you for taking 3 hours, everybody for taking 3 hours out of their night. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good, good. Okay. Any other comments for the good of the order? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Tinsley.
Oh, just wanting to recap the exact same thing. Thank you so much. This was very good. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay.
You did mention that you only had 2 of the references from Robert's rules. Can you just summarize the ones that you use most often?
Okay, so the handout package includes quite a bit.
Okay.
Quite a bit more. It has summaries of motions that could come up during meetings, and so
Okay.
Robert's rules is a fascinating science in itself. But
It is.
and like I told you, I belong to the National Association of Parliamentarians and another parliamentary organization, and their meetings are not necessarily all that productive because sometimes the process the procedure becomes too dominant, and the focus on visioning, looking at mandates, and how do we increase capacity to deliver that mandate in a meaningful way is not there because we're too much looking at the how instead of looking at the what. What is it that we want to do? What is it that we want to see sometime later, let's say a year later or 4 or 5 years later? What is it that we want to see in the review mirror? And so what do we need to do between now and then to make sure that that indeed is a result?
And my very last question is,
Okay.
what is the most current Robert's Rules? I have the 10th edition and I've had it for quite a while, so I just kind of wonder how.
Oh, sure. So
if I needed one.
Yeah, the authors of the book, since the 10th edition, every 10 years or so, they come up with a new edition. And in 2020, in September of 2020, they launched the 12th edition. So that's 1, 2. So the 2 since then. Yeah.
Okay.
So how much of a difference it made, I can't. I mean, when I wrote my first exam, I needed to know every page in the book. So they give us a very detailed exam. How much of it do I actually use in the 37, 38 years that I've been doing it? Maybe 5% of what's in the book. It's fascinating, but it's not always. But basically, what I tell my colleagues at the National Association of Parliamentarians that we need to have multiple toolboxes. And Robert is one of them, but it's one of them. Common sense, others. So we just need to use that judiciously, effectively, because what matters is how we serve the community. Ms. McDonald, you still have your hand up? You want to say more?
No, sorry, no, I did not mean to say more. I'll lower it now. Thank you.
Okay, no, I was just giving the benefit of the doubt. That's okay. I sometimes forget to put my hands down too, so not a problem. Okay.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody for being here. We're going to be adjourning the meeting. Any objections?
That's
No.
very good. You're putting unanimous consent to work. I applaud you. That's great.
Okay, thank you very much. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you.
Thank
All the
you,
best.
Eli. Thank you.
Thanks. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Good night.